Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel, MR.Creepy N. So today's video is definitely going to creep you out. In this video, we're getting into 4 true terrifying stories from people who got trapped alone during winter snowstorms. Before we begin, let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. If you enjoy this kind of content, make sure to like the video and subscribe. Alright, let's get into tonight's stories. I was 29 and I got stuck on Miller Creek Road. I know that road like the back of my hand. Grew up 2 towns over. Drove it probably 300 times in my life. 2 lanes, state forest on both sides, no houses, no lights. In summer, it's nothing. In a November snowstorm at 9 at night, it's a completely different thing. I'd been at my sister's place in northern Michigan for the weekend. The forecast said flurries, light stuff. I wasn't worried. I had good all-season tires, decent ground clearance, and about 90 minutes between me and my apartment. I turned onto Miller Creek because it cuts 20 minutes off the highway route. I'd done it 100 times. The snow had been coming down for about 40 minutes when the road disappeared. Not gradually. 1 second I could see the center line. The next there was just white, flat, seamless white from tree line to tree line. I slowed to about 15 miles an hour and just watched the shoulder. That's when the front left tire dropped off the edge of the pavement and the whole truck tilted and sank into the ditch. Nothing dramatic, no skidding, just a slow tilt and then stuck. I got out. The snow was already past my ankles and falling hard. I tried rocking the truck forward and back for about 10 minutes before I accepted it. I was stuck until morning. No cell signal. Wind building from the northwest. Temperature already at 4 degrees according to my dashboard. I had a sleeping bag behind the seat, a bottle of water, and half a sleeve of crackers. I climbed into the back seat, sipped up, and lay there listening to the wind work against the windows. I told myself it was fine. People wait out storms in their trucks all the time. I'd be cold and uncomfortable, and I'd have a story to tell. That was it. I fell asleep sometime around 10:30. I woke up because the truck moved. Not from wind, this was different. A single, slow shift, like weight settling onto the driver's side running board. The kind of movement you feel in your body before your brain processes it. I sat up fast and wiped the condensation off the rear window with my sleeve and looked out. The snow had built up to the door handle on the passenger side. The road was gone under it. Trees on both sides were dark shapes in the white, and running directly alongside the driver's door, fresh enough that they hadn't started filling in yet, were footprints, human footprints. They came from behind the truck, passed alongside it, and continued down the road ahead, deep, even. The stride was long but completely regular, no variation, no drag, no sign of someone fighting through snow that was now past mid-calf. Just a straight, mechanical line of steps, moving forward into the dark. I sat there for a long time, just looking at them. I almost opened the door. I had my hand on the handle. I was going to call out, see if someone needed help, see if they'd seen a house or a gas station up ahead. My hand was on the handle, but I didn't open it. I don't know exactly why. Something about the evenness of those steps, the way they didn't slow or hesitate at all when passing a stranded truck on a pitch-dark road in a blizzard. Normal people slow down, normal people stop. I lay back down, coat pulled up around my jaw. I stared at the ceiling and listened. 20 minutes later I heard it. It started at the back of the truck. A sound I still can't fully describe. Not a footstep exactly, more like pressure. Like something placing its weight down very carefully, testing the surface. 1 step, pause, another step. It moved along the driver's side slowly, just outside the door, close enough that I could feel a shift in the air even through the glass. My breath was fogging up the windows fast now. I didn't wipe them. I didn't want to see. It stopped at the driver's door. I heard breathing, slow, deep, and completely even. Like someone standing perfectly still with their face inches from the window. Not panicked, not labored, just breathing. The kind of breathing that means whatever is outside is not cold, not struggling, not in any hurry at all. I pressed myself against the opposite door and I did not move. I did not make a sound. My whole body was shaking and I was biting down on the collar of my coat to keep my teeth from chattering. It stood there for a long time, maybe 3 minutes, maybe more. Then the pressure shifted, the weight moved back down the running board, and the breathing faded. I lay in that truck until 4:15 in the morning. I didn't sleep. I didn't look out the windows again. When the sky finally went gray, I got out, jammed the floor mat under the tire, and pushed the truck out of the ditch. Before I got back in, I looked at the snow around the truck. The original tracks were still there, going forward down the road. But there was a second set now, starting from the rear of the truck, walking slowly along the driver's side, stopping at the door, then circling the entire truck in a wide, slow loop. Every step the same depth, the same spacing. The circle was nearly perfect. Then the tracks went straight into the tree line and stopped at the edge where the snow thinned under the canopy. I could not see where they went after that. I drove home without stopping, hands shaking the whole way. I didn't call anyone until I was inside my apartment with the deadbolt fern. I've thought about it for years now. The most generous explanation I have is that someone was out there that night. A person who heard me stuck on the road, came to check, saw me asleep, and decided to leave without knocking. That's what I tell myself when I need to sleep, but I keep coming back to the breathing. The way it was slow and even and completely unbothered. The cold that night was brutal. Whatever was standing outside my truck, with its face against the glass for 3 minutes in a blizzard at 4 degrees, it was not uncomfortable. It was not in a hurry, and it did not want me to open that door. I don't drive forest roads in winter anymore, haven't in 6 years. Highway only, no matter how long it adds to the trip. My girlfriend thinks it's a weird quirk. I've never told her the real reason. We were both working dead-end warehouse jobs in our early 20s. Same carpool, same shift, same bad coffee from the same gas station on Route 9. 11 years. You spend 11 years around a person. You stop thinking about how well you know them. You just know them. The way he laughs before the punchline. The way he holds a coffee cup with both hands even in summer. The way he always ducks going through a door frame even when he's got 4 inches of clearance. That's what made it so wrong. We'd been ice fishing Harmon Lake every January for 6 winters straight. 45 minutes past the last gas station. Nothing out there but frozen water and spruce trees and the kind of silence that actually has weight to it. Second year we went. We dragged out enough plywood to build a small permanent shanty right on the ice. Nothing impressive. 4 walls, a propane heater, 2 beat-up folding chairs, a hole cut in the floor. We knew that lake completely, where the ice thin near the eastern inlet, where it was thick enough to park a truck on. It was ours. The Saturday it happened, Dale called me at 7 in the morning. Alternator was dead. Same issue he'd had in October. He was calling Barb. She runs a one-person shop out of her garage, been fixing his truck for 4 years. He calls her the best mechanic in the county, at least once a month. And he tried to make it out by noon. I told him I'd head out early, get the heater going, have coffee ready. I made the drive alone, loaded the sled at the access trail, and pulled it out across the ice. The sky was doing that thing it does before a serious storm. Not dark, just low and pressed down, like a ceiling in a room with no windows. But it wasn't snowing yet. Ice was solid. I got the heater running, dropped a line, poured coffee, and just sat there in that quiet. Around 11:30, I heard footsteps outside. Heavy crunching steps coming from the direction of the trail. I figured Dale had sorted the truck faster than expected. I remember smiling a little. Barb really is that good. The door opened. Green Carhartt jacket, the one with the tear on the left elbow, patched with black electrical tape, because Dale refused to replace it. Same dark work boots, same height, same build, same face. I looked up from my line, ready to say something about his truck, but he came through the door wrong, too carefully, like someone who had studied door frames but never actually used one. And he didn't duck. In 11 years, through hundreds of door frames, Dale always ducks. Pure habit. An inch to spare, and he still does it every single time. This thing walked in straight-backed and deliberate, and stood there for just a half-second too long before lowering itself into the chair. I said, "Hey." It looked at me. Dale's eyes. Same color, same slight squint, but the focus behind them was off, like looking at a photograph of someone's face rather than the actual face, something present in the shape but absent in the depth. It said, "Hey, back," his voice, his exact flat delivery, but the word arrived about half a second after it should have. A small delay, the kind you wouldn't notice if you didn't know the person. I knew the person. I asked how he got the truck sorted so fast. It looked at the fishing hole between us, then back at me. Then it said the guy at the shop was quick about it. I kept my face completely still and took a slow sip of coffee. Dale has never once in 11 years referred to Bob as the guy at the shop. Not once. Not ever. That drop in the stomach, that's the only way I can describe it. Not panic, not yet. Just that lurch, like stepping off a curb in the dark when you thought the ground was level. I let 30 seconds go by without speaking. It sat across from me with both hands on its knees and it did not move. Dale always fidgets. Picks at the tape on his jacket sleeve, taps his boot heel against the chair leg, checks his line every 90 seconds, whether he needs to or not. This thing sat completely still and watched me with that flat expression, and the heater was running and the shanty was warm, but I felt cold from somewhere that had nothing to do with temperature. I started talking about the ice on the north end, said I'd heard from someone at the trailhead that the fish were holding near the pressure ridge up there. I was packing my gear while I talked, slowly, casually, every movement deliberate, every word chosen. My whole mind was running very fast and very quietly underneath a face that I needed to keep completely normal. It watched me pack, didn't offer to help, didn't ask why I was taking everything, didn't say a word, just watched with those eyes that were the right color and the wrong depth. I said I'd go check it and come back if it looked worth moving. It said okay. One word, nothing after it. Dale would have said something. A joke, a complaint about his coffee going cold, a comment about the weather. This thing said okay and turned back to the hole in the ice like I was already gone. I stepped outside. I walked north. I did not run. Something in the base of my brain was communicating something very clearly, that running would change whatever this was into something I did not want it to become. So I walked with my steps getting slightly longer, slightly faster, cutting left toward the western shore after 2 minutes, moving through the snow with everything I had while keeping my arms relaxed at my sides. Behind me, the shanty door open. I ran, full sprint, gear and boots and thighs burning, snow crust breaking under every step. I hit the access trail and followed it all the way to the parking lot without looking back once. Got in my truck, punched the lock down, sat there with both hands on the wheel, and my whole body shaking so hard the keys were rattling against my leg. 1 bar. I called Dale. He picked up on the second ring, still at Bob's, waiting on a part, hadn't left town, sounded bored, normal, completely himself, said maybe he'd make it out tomorrow. I left everything on that ice, both rods, the heater, the sled, the shanty we built with our own hands over 2 cold weekends 6 years ago. I drove home doing 80 on an empty road and didn't stop once. Dale went out the following weekend with his brother and got everything. Called me that night laughing, said it looked like I'd just stood up mid-cast and walked off the ice. I told him the storm made me nervous. He said, fair enough, and we hung up, and I sat there in my kitchen for a long time, not moving. They found a man's body in the tree line off the Harmon Lake access trail that March, when the snow finally melted enough. A hiker, they said. He'd been there since at least November. A man who lived alone, 2 counties over, and had no connection to that lake, no reason to be anywhere near it, no explanation for what he was doing in those woods in November, or how he died there, or why nobody had reported him missing for 4 months. I didn't connect it to anything. I told myself I didn't. But here's what I haven't been able to let go of, not in 6 years of trying. Whatever sat in that shanty in Dale's coat had watched him closely enough to copy his voice, his face, his jacket down to the patched elbow, his boots, the way he sits, the way he responds. It had done serious, patient, extended homework. It just hadn't watched him walk through a doorframe. It had one gap, one small blind spot in 6 years of knowledge, And that one thing is the only reason I'm here to tell you this. I still see Dale every couple of weeks. Cookouts, football games, passing each other on Route 9 and waving. He's still Dale. Same laugh, same coffee cup grip, same complaints about his truck. And every single time, without fail, without even meaning to, I watch to see if he ducks. I was 26 and 3 months out of a relationship. I should have left 2 years earlier when I took the house-sitting job. My friend Cara knew the family, the Olesons. They were going to spend the holidays with relatives in another state and needed someone to watch the place over a 12-day stretch in January. Big farmhouse on the edge of a rural county in Wisconsin. Long private driveway, nearest neighbor about a mile down the road, surrounded on 3 sides by open cornfield that goes flat and white and endless in winter. The pay was decent. All I had to do was keep the pipes from freezing, collect the mail, and make sure the sump pump in the basement didn't back up during the thaw cycles. Kara said the Olesons were particular but kind. She said the house was old but solid. She said I'd probably be bored. She was wrong about that last part. I moved in on a Thursday, brought my own groceries, my laptop, 3 books I'd been meaning to read for a year. The house was clean and warm and smelled like the cedar closet in the hallway. Mrs. Cobbat in the hallway. Oleson had left a handwritten instruction list on the kitchen counter. 4 pages, front and back. Pipe locations, pump schedule, which burners on the stove ran hot, which key unlocked what, at the very bottom, in slightly heavier pen pressure than the rest. She had written 1 line that I read, and then moved past without thinking too much about. The bedroom at the end of the hall on the 2nd floor stays closed. It doesn't need anything. I didn't ask Cara about it. I figured it was a child's old room, a private thing. I respected it and didn't touch the door. First 3 days were quiet. I settled into a routine. Coffee at 7, check the basement pump at 9, walk the ground floor, read until noon, make something simple for lunch. The house had good bones, old radiators that knocked and hissed through the night, but kept every room genuinely warm. I slept well those first nights, better than I had in months actually. The 4th night the temperature dropped hard. The forecast said -14 by morning, with wind chills pushing -30. I went around the whole house, checking the windows like Mrs. Olders said, making sure every latch was fully seated. Ground floor, fine. 2nd floor, fine. I went down the upstairs hallway, checking each room. I stopped at the closed door, at the end. It didn't need anything, she'd said, but I could feel cold air coming through the gap at the bottom. Not a draft exactly, more like the room on the other side was significantly colder than the hallway. I stood there for a moment, then told myself a window was probably cracked, that letting a pipe freeze in that room would be worse than opening a door I'd been asked to leave closed, and I turned the handle and pushed it open. The room was empty, just a bare mattress on a metal frame, a small dresser, and curtains pulled shut over the single window. The window was fully latched. The room was cold because the radiator valve was turned completely off, deliberately, all the way to 0. I stood in the doorway and looked at the room and felt nothing except a vague relief that the window was secure. I pulled the door shut and went back downstairs. At 2 in the morning I woke up and I didn't know why. No sound, no movement. The radiators were doing their usual knock and hiss. Wind pushing against the west side of the house in slow, steady pressure. I lay there for a minute, then got up to use the bathroom. The hallway was dark except for the nightlight I'd plugged in near the stairs. I walked to the bathroom, used it, came back out. The door at the end of the hall was open, not wide open, about 6 inches, just enough to show a strip of dark inside the room. I had pulled it shut. I remembered the resistance of the latch catching. I stood in the hallway in my socks, looking at that 6-inch gap and the dark behind it, and I felt the first real cold of that trip, the kind that starts in your chest and spreads outward. I told myself the latch hadn't caught properly. Old house, old hardware. The door had just swung open on its own. I walked down the hall and pulled it shut again, and this time I tested it, pressed against it with my palm, made sure it held. It held. I went back to bed In the morning, I came downstairs and the kitchen felt different. Not different in any way. I could immediately identify just a quality of the air, like someone had recently been standing in it. I made coffee and stood at the counter and looked around the room. Everything was where it should be. Dishes in the rack, my book on the table, the instruction list on the counter. Then I noticed the chair. There was a kitchen chair, pulled away from the table at an angle, like someone had been sitting in it and stood up without pushing it back in. I had eaten my last meal at the kitchen island. I hadn't touched a table chair since I moved in. I stood there looking at that chair for a long time. I pushed it back in and spent the rest of the morning trying to reconstruct a reasonable explanation. Old houses shift. Chairs move. I probably bumped it walking past in the dark. I almost convinced myself. That night around 11, I was reading on the couch when I heard it. Upstairs, a slow, measured sound moving across the ceiling directly above me. Not the house settling, not the radiators. Footsteps, deliberate, even footsteps moving from the direction of the end bedroom toward the top of the stairs, then stopping right at the top of the stairs. I sat absolutely still with my book open on my lap and my eyes on the ceiling, and I counted my own heartbeats because it was the only way to keep my breathing even. 1, 2, 3. The footsteps did not continue down the stairs. They did not retreat back down the hall. They just stopped, right above the doorway at the top of the stairs, like something was standing there, looking down into the dark living room at me. I did not move for a long time. Eventually, I got up, slowly, and went to the bottom of the stairs and looked up. The hallway was empty. The nightlight was on. The door at the end of the hall was closed. I slept on the couch that night, with every light in the ground floor on. The next morning, I called Kara. I didn't tell her everything, just that the house felt off, and asked if she knew anything about the closed bedroom. She said she didn't know the details, but she thought the Olsons had lost someone, a family member who had lived with them for a while. Elderly, she thought. She said it had been somewhat recent. Within the last year. I asked which room. Another pause. She said she wasn't sure. That afternoon, I went up to the end bedroom one more time. I stood in the doorway and looked at the bare mattress and the turned-off radiator and the closed curtains. And I noticed something I hadn't seen the first time. On the top of the small dresser, there was a thin layer of dust on everything except one spot. A clean oval, about the size and shape of a photograph frame, where something had been sitting until recently and had been removed before I arrived. I packed my bag that afternoon. I called the Olsons' contact number and left a message saying there had been a family situation and I had to leave, and I was sorry and I'd return the key by mail. I drove out the long private driveway without looking in the rearview mirror. I know what I heard that night. I know the weight and rhythm of a person walking. I know the difference between a house shifting in cold air and footsteps with intention and pause and direction. I know what I heard at the top of those stairs. What I can't explain is the chair. That single kitchen chair pulled out at an angle, like someone had just been sitting in it. Because the footsteps I heard were upstairs, and whatever moved that chair had been in the kitchen. There were 2 of them. I haven't house sat since. I won't stay anywhere that has a room someone tells me doesn't need anything. Because I've learned that when someone says a room doesn't need anything, what they usually mean is something else entirely. They mean, don't go in there. They mean it's already taken care of. I was 24 and 2 weeks into a winter contract with the county road crew when the worst snowstorm in 11 years shut down every highway between Caldwell and the state line. Our supervisor, a heavy-set quiet man named Hatch, pulled 3 of us aside that morning and said someone needed to stay at the equipment depot overnight. The depot sat about 9 miles outside of town at the end of a service road, surrounded by flat, open farmland on every side. It was basically a large heated garage, a small attached office with a cot and a bathroom, a radio, and a parking lot full of plow trucks. The job was simple. Monitor the radio, keep the equipment warm, call in if anything flooded or lost power, standard storm protocol. The other 2 guys had wives, kids. I had a studio apartment and nowhere to be. I said I'd do it. Hatch gave me a bag of food, a thermos, the the radio frequency list, and one piece of advice before he drove away. He said the service road would be impassable by nightfall, so once I was in until morning. He said don't go outside after dark unless something is actually on fire. I didn't think much of that at the time. I got there around 3 in the afternoon. Storm was already building. Sky that low gray color that means business. I did a walkthrough of the garage, checked all 6 trucks, made sure the heating units were running on the equipment that needed it. The office was small but warm. Old metal desk, a cot with 2 wool blankets, a radio mounted on the wall that crackled weather updates every 20 minutes. I made coffee on a hot plate, ate a sandwich, and settled in with my phone. By 5 o'clock the snow was coming sideways and the service road had disappeared completely under a flat, white sheet. By 7, the visibility through the office window was maybe 30 feet. Around 8:30, I got up to use the bathroom, and on my way back, I glanced through the window out of habit and stopped. There was a man standing in the parking lot. He was maybe 40 feet from the office window, standing just at the edge of where the exterior floodlight reached. Heavy coat, dark, a wool hat, pulled low. He was standing completely still, facing the office, and he was waving, a slow, patient, side-to-side wave, the kind you'd use to get someone's attention from a distance. I grabbed my coat immediately. Someone was stranded out here in -18 wind chills and needed help. I had the door half open before something made me pause. The parking lot between the office and where he was standing was completely undisturbed snow. No tracks, a full flat surface with nothing breaking it from the door to where he stood. He was standing in the middle of that lot in 8 inches of fresh snow, and there was no trail behind him, no depression around him, nothing to show how he had arrived or how long he had been standing there. I stood in the doorway with cold air pouring in around me and looked at that unblemished snow, and then back at the man. He was still waving. I closed the door, locked it, stood with my back against it, and just breathed for a minute. I told myself there had to be a logical sequence of events. Maybe the snow had drifted and filled his tracks after he stopped. Maybe he'd come across the field from a direction where the wind had swept the surface clean. I ran through everything I could think of. None of it fully held. I went to the radio and tried to raise hatch. Static and weather interruptions for about 10 minutes before I got through. I told him there was a man in the parking lot who looked like he needed help, but something felt wrong about it. Hatch went quiet on the other end for a moment. Then he asked me if the man was waving. I said yes. Hatch said, "Don't open the door." I asked him what that meant. He said there had been an accident on that service road about 7 years ago. A county worker named Pryor who had been trying to flag down a plow truck during a storm. He'd been struck. He said Pryor had been found about 30 feet from the equipment depot, facing the office, in the position of someone who had been waving for help. I asked Hatch if he was being serious with me. He said he was, and then said something I have thought about almost every day since. He said it wasn't always Pryor. He said sometimes it was just something that knew about Pryor. He said either way, don't open the door, don't make eye contact through the window, and don't acknowledge it in any way. He said if I ignored it long enough, it would move on before morning. I sat at that desk with my back to the window for the next 4 hours. I didn't look. I had made a decision, and I held it. I kept the radio on and focused on the weather updates, and did not turn around. Once, around midnight, I heard something against the exterior wall of the office. Not a knock, not a voice, just a slow dragging pressure moving along the outside of the wall from the window toward the door, like something trailing its fingers along the siding as it walked. It stopped at the door. It stayed there for a while. Then it moved away. At 4:30 in the morning, Hatch's voice came through the radio and asked me if I was all right. I said yes. He said good. Then he asked me one question. He asked me if I had looked out the window at any point after our call. I told him no. He said that was the right answer, and that the morning crew would be there by 7. I asked him why it mattered whether I'd looked. He paused for a long time. Then he said, because the ones that know you've seen them don't move on. He said, they stay. He said some guys out at that depot over the years had kept looking, kept watching it through the window all night long, and by morning, when the crew arrived, they were fine, physically, totally fine, but they never came back to work. He said 2 of them had to be checked into somewhere. He said they all reported the same thing, that by the time morning came, whatever was outside had stopped waving and had started pointing. I finished my contract that winter, and I took an indoor position the following year. I still drive past that service road sometimes, on my way to other parts of the county. I never look down it, and on bad storm nights, when the snow comes sideways, and the visibility drops, and the fields go white and flat in every direction, I keep my curtains closed, because once you know that something is out there in the dark, using a dead man's gesture to get you to open a door, you stop being curious about what's standing in the snow. You just stop looking, and you thank God you learned that early enough. And that's all for tonight's stories. If any of these stories felt a little too familiar, if you've ever been somewhere isolated in winter and felt like something outside knew you were in there, drop it in the comments. I read every single one. If this video got under your skin, hit the like button. It genuinely helps the channel more than you'd think. And if you're new here and you made it all the way to the end of this video, welcome. You're exactly the kind of person who belongs here. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. Stay warm tonight. Keep your doors locked, and whatever you do, don't open it just because someone's waving. I'm Mr. Creepy, and I'll see you in the next one.